And so I see in the chat we do have quite a few people who do use Voces for Mundo already. There are some who have never tried it before or use some of our other Spanish titles. So to introduce these titles, Spanish Novice is one that you might be familiar with if you've been a subscriber to Voces for a while. Voces por Mundo 1 and 2 is sort of a revamp of that old title, really making some updates to it, just to bring it forward to the modern age, as that title was quite a few years old. We added some really good resources in there. It is different from the Nuestra Historia series that you might have heard about earlier with Justin, in that it is not CI or story based, although we do have stories in there in each chapter just for you to use if you feel the need. But it's really focused on your traditional Spanish teaching methods with thematic chapters and explicit vocabulary and grammar instructions. So let me just get into the presentation. You're going to learn who this series is made for, how it's organized, what the key resources are, what are my favorite resources, and a few tips on pacing the curriculum. So Voces por Mundo 1 would be for beginning Spanish students, 2 for perhaps second-year students, and Voces por Mundo 3 for your third-year students. So it's rather straightforward. We do have some teachers that split it up a little differently because it is 11 chapters of content, but we can talk about that a little bit more with tips on how to pace the curriculum. So each unit consists of an introduction to introduce the target Spanish-speaking country that students are going to learn about throughout the chapter. There is that core vocabulary and grammar instruction I mentioned before, where you have pages with grammar explanations alongside presentations and even Spanish playground videos that explain some of those grammar and vocabulary topics. And then we have the bonus content and culture, or things that you can use to supplement that initial instruction. These are the stories, they're interviews, articles, and a lot more that I can dive into a little bit later. And then we also have the assessment tools, which include, I believe, 3 quizzes per chapter, as well as overall assessment for the very end. And so this is what it would look like when you log into your account and look at one chapter. So we have up here that vocabulary and grammar instruction with activities. So these are commonly done together in class or assigned as homework. Some of them are multiple choice, fill in the blank, just practicing those key concepts. And then we have a couple different sections. The Viajamos section is a series of about 4 or 5 pages with panoramas, videos, travel blogs that get students to explore the country and maybe see it from the point of view as a visitor. The cultural exploration section just below explores other key aspects of the country that might not be covered in the chapter. So say the chapter theme is about animals, maybe we'll explore a little bit of what the key foods are in that country, or something unique to that country that's not necessarily connected to the overall theme. We have then interviews by native speakers in each chapter, alongside stories. So if you're not quite sure about teaching with stories yet, or you want to start, you're just interested, you've heard about classroom readers, but you haven't ever used them before, we have included 2 stories in each chapter for you to get in there and try out. And then we have, as I said, a variety of assessment at the very end of the chapter that we can explore if anyone has questions about what those entail. And again, here's just a reiteration of what I've already been saying, the key resources, the grammar vocabulary, practice activities. And then I would just like to point out two of my favorite resources. So we have the Vamos a Charlar, which is a rubric graded speaking practice. And I'd like to just pull that up so you can see it in the actual website. So I've got chapter 2 of Voces per Mundo 2 open. And if we come down here, we'll see the speaking section. So in other Spanish programs that you've used before, there might not be a dedicated space for speaking, or it's very sparse, but we want to make sure that students get that chance to, with the interpersonal tasks here, they'll be able to partner up with a fellow student and practice their speaking skills that way. Or we also have several different presentational where they might be giving a presentation or talking about themselves. So if we just click on one and we'll see. So this is one of those ones where you partner up with a classmate and decide who will be a traveler and who will be the hotel concierge. And we give them a little real world context before they dive into their recording. And we do have these actful based rubrics for these activities and elsewhere in the curriculum that they can use to guide their speaking practice. So that is one resource that I really like that you may not find in some of the other titles in Voces. So I think that's one that makes Voces per Mundo unique. Oh yeah, and then I had the screenshots that I forgot to tell you about. So it also starts with a list of personal questions for students to answer to get warmed up before diving into those other tasks that I just mentioned. And then we'll go to the stories. So in the story sections, you'll have 2 or 3 activities both before and after reading the story. The stories fit the theme of the chapter and will use those vocabulary terms that students have been using throughout. But the before reading activities will cover those vocabulary again, reintroduce them, or maybe introduce new ones that haven't been used so far. And then the after reading questions to check for comprehension. And the stories, a big chunk of them have been written by Brian Candle, but we also have included many stories written by native Spanish speakers as well. And my advice to you, if you are interested in using these stories, is with your Voces account or trial, you have access, or you don't even have to sign up for a trial, I don't think, to use the hub. But in any case, you can log in, add this to your account, and take a look. We have a few videos, very short videos, with tips on storytelling and using that for language acquisitions. And in addition to that, if you want to know even more about teaching stories, at 11 today, Erica and Justin will be talking more about that in depth. So be sure to check that out. And Catherine, what you see as a teacher will be almost the exact same as what your student sees. There are, I don't think on this page, there are a few pages with yellow boxes that are teacher only. So you'll be able to see them, but when students log into their account, they won't be able to see that instruction, which I can't think of a specific page right now where that would be, but it's in there.
If you go to like one of the vocabulary pages or a story early on, there should be a teacher note on one of those pages.
Yeah, I think they're
No?
less frequent. I think they're less frequent in Voces for Mundo.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry, I forgot that's where we were. Go
Sometimes I put
to,
them in here, I thought. No, I didn't.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've seen them around like some of um the assessments maybe, or go to the can do pre-assessment. I bet there's
Oh
one on
yeah, you're
there.
right. No, not even there.
Oh my gosh, of course. Well, as
Um,
Hannah said, there are sections you'll see that have a yellow outline, and we'll try to find one, and
yeah.
I'll see what I can do in the background over here, Hannah.
In addition to that, though, you'll also, when you're in the menu, you'll see these sections with apples next to them. And that means that when students log on, they'll see everything except these sections, which are teacher only. Uh, yeah, I don't recall putting too many teacher notes in these pages. But students, so particular with these assessment pages, students will be able to see them once you have assigned them using our grading tool. So it'll pop up on their page that they can go in and complete those assessments without them being in their menu. So there's that. And Katrina wants to know if these titles might be recommended for native or heritage speakers. None of our titles in Voces are specifically geared towards heritage speakers. But there are certainly ways to increase the difficulty or give, your heritage speakers more to do than your average English speaking student. I think we can give a more detailed response on that maybe during the Q&A session later today. And let me just continue on to how do you pace this? So with the Voces por Mundo series, we would say that completing one full title in a year would be kind of a more accelerated pace, although it's certainly possible for some teachers. And within the curriculum, we have documents here. I have a screenshot example of what one partial 50-minute class might look like. So we have, I think, how one chapter would be with 50-minute classes 5 times a week would take about 6 weeks with that accelerated pace. But we do have many teachers who divide the curriculum in between years for a slower pace. You can take a look at the chapters and decide for yourself, there's 11 chapters here. We're just going to shoot for 8 this year. And then your Spanish 2 students might do 9 through 11 and the first half of Voces por Mundo 2. You'd want to discuss that with your fellow teachers if there's any other in your department and making sure that you're all on the same page there. So yeah, and I can show you where that's located. So we're logged into Voces por Mundo 2 in the teachers panel at the top here under resources. And at the very top here, we have the detailed Chapter 1 pacing guide. There's lots of information at the top, and then if we scroll down, you'll see those 50-minute classes. Oh, it's actually one chapter is 3 weeks. And if we look at the menu, you'll see, how long it is, how many pages there are. We don't expect every teacher to use every page, especially when it comes to the cultural content. Maybe you'll choose 3 out of this whole list to cover with your students that you think they'll find most interesting or useful. And then you can always come back to them if needed or if, the topic comes up in class. But they're there for you to use if needed.